Okay, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of KUKA Robotics, welcome to getting started with KUKA.WorkVisual Webinar. We have a great presenter for you today. We have Dan Statz, who is our Senior Applications Engineer. And a little housekeeping notes, everyone's microphone has been muted, but if you do have questions, please put them in the chat area, and I will ask those questions on your behalf. So without further ado, Dan.
Hello. Hello, everyone. So today is going to be a live demonstration of 3 useful tools of KUKA's configuration software, WorkVisual. There'll be no slides. It's just going to be me going through some the demonstration and yapping away at the same time. So let's just get right into it. So I'm just going to browse through the project. I'm not using an actual controller today. I'm using what we call an OPS, offline programming system. So there'll be some differences, but I'll let you know as we go along what the differences will be. So just to review, WorkVisual is our free configuration software. You need it to set up your controller, the actual robot that you're using. If any of your tech packages that you're adding and configuring, a lot of them can be done right inside WorkVisual. Mapping a bio is done with WorkVisual. Your safety configuration can be done with WorkVisual. And a lot of major editing can be done with WorkVisual, and it works quite well. Just as an example, there's a small program here. It checks your syntax and stuff like that. So it's a useful tool, but today we're going to be using, or I'm going to be demonstrating some of our programming and diagnosis tools that are in a different tab. And they'll be, the three main items are remote support viewer, which is an add-on tech package. And I'm simply using it today so that I can show you the SmartPad and KRL editing and transfer of routines rather than a whole project from WorkVisual. And then our trace and configuration and oscilloscope analyzing. So our remote support view, basically it's an optional add-on package. It has to be added to WorkVisual in your option package management, and then it actually needs to be as an option installed into your project. And once you install in your project and deploy it to your controller, you can use WorkVisual to view the customer and or someone on your floor's SmartPad screen for troubleshooting, commissioning, configuration support, that sort of thing. So I'm going to switch to our workspace selection, programming and diagnosis here. This is where all the actions are going to take place today. And on your right, you'll see the cells tree pops up. So this is every controller that I would be connected to. Today I'm only connected to one because I'm sitting in my office. But you could have several here and connect to several at the same time. So I'm just going to connect there, and you'll see it pops up over here that that controller is available. And I'm going to click on the tool to create the connection. So in this pop-up, you just want to make sure that it's the right IP that you're looking for. For some reason you're not connected to the controller that you want to be connected to, and this is the one that I'm looking for, and it's going to go OK. And then I'm going to establish a controller state, which just reads in the program that refreshes them, because I've been on and off this thing the last few days, so I just want to make sure that it's up to date. Then we would go to our extras menu and scroll down here to remote access and enable remote access. And then this pop-up just comes up and it tells you a list of your configured IP addresses on your laptop or your PC. I'm going directly to the KLI port, so I'm just going to use a hard port here. And then after that is established, we go back to the remote access, and there's 3 choices here. You can connect to the selected IP. If you had several IPs connected on your cell tree over here on the right, you can connect to all of them if you want, or you can enter the IP address manually. I'm just going to connect to the selected IP, and then up pops the SmartPad view. And you can see here that it's showing that I'm connected in the view mode. Now, because I'm connected to a OPS rather than a true controller, I see a bit more than you would normally see. If you're connected to a true controller, you would just see this rectangle, and all these other buttons and start buttons would not be available. So the next thing I'm going to do is this little, once you're connected in view mode, this pops up here, and I'm going to request control. And you can see on screen, control mode is now available for me. So I can actually press buttons on the screen. That is configurable on the pendant. You can have it that if someone requests control, that the operator that's at the SmartPad has to acknowledge it before they can actually take control. So now that I can have control, you know, if there was errors up here, or I can log in as an expert. I can use the menu, I can go to programs, select programs. Now I couldn't run this. I can run it because I'm on an OPS, I can run it here, but if you were on a real controller, only the operator that's at the SmartPad can run it. Okay, that's it for remote support view. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew what I was using here, and it is an option. You can purchase this and as an add-on. I think it goes around for $500 list, US dollars. But if there's any questions, if not, I'll just continue on.
No questions at this time.
Okay, great. So I'm going to now go to the editing and transferring of routines. So this is, you don't need remote view for this. This is just, I'm just again using it so that I can show you guys the screen. So you can see on the left here, this is very similar to our layout explorer on the SmartPad. And I can open the file here, and I'm just going to split the screen so you can see both sides. There's also a zoom feature here that lets you zoom in on the remote support view. As you can see, it's basically opens the files very similar to the configuration commissioning screen. But in this particular case, we can actually type in commands here, something like that, or we can enter comments or several lines of code. And then once we do this, you can actually transfer this to the controller. So there's a transfer button up here, transfer changes to the controller, or you can right click on the file and hit transfer changes. It prompts you to save the changes because I haven't saved the changes yet. I'll just say okay. And then it's actually prompting me to send this file and overwrite the file that's actually on the controller. I'm going to say okay here, and you can see on the controller side that it is popped up with a grant access to the remote, the person that's trying to send the file remotely. You have to, one thing, I'm already in expert mode, unfortunately, but you have to be in expert mode to be able to transfer this file. So that wouldn't have popped up unless I was in expert or higher. So now you can see I've quickly made the changes that I wanted to make. And like I said, it's useful for, I'd say if you want to type several KRL commands or do some editing on the fly without having to deploy a whole project and have to reinitialize your controller. That's basically what it's for. Editing positional stuff like that, or motions is probably best done on the SmartPad, although you can edit inline forms on this. I wouldn't recommend it just because you're very limited to the inline forms that you can use. You can also add them, but again, it's limited. It's just the basic ones. There are some that are included, such as conveyor tech and glue tech, I believe. But other than that, it's just the basic commands that are allowed. Okay, any questions?
None at this time.
Okay. So then we're going to go on to the third part and largest part of our webinar today, and that's the trace configuration and the trace analysis software. So I'm just going to close some of this off. Don't need to save that. And I'm going to open up our trace configuration. So trace configuration, I don't know if you know, is available on our SmartPad. I find it quite cumbersome and hard to use. It's very easy and well laid out in WorkVisual, and I definitely recommend using WorkVisual for any sort of trace and oscilloscope analyzation. So I'm going to go through this for you today, and I've done this with several customers in the past to get them to do traces that I've needed to try and figure out problems, but it's definitely worthwhile knowing how to do this. So in the configuration file, there's a choice of source, local, meaning on your laptop, and the controller itself. I always recommend using the controller simply because of tech packages that you have installed on the controller. There will be different configurations available that you can select from. And a lot of times, if you're troubleshooting with certain packages like ArcTech or Conveyor Tech or ServoGun, they have special traces or trace configurations that you can use to sort out some problems, and might be asked by KUKA support group to do that. But today, we're just going to create my own. Oh, actually, another reason for having it on the controller is, for one thing, other personnel can get at it. And another thing is, if you're asked to do a KRC diag and send it off to whoever's supporting you remotely, the traces will be sent with the KRC diag. So it's you're probably better off doing it with the source being the controller. So there are default configurations on here. I'm going to go through creating a new one. So the template, you have a choice of all the existing configurations that are built in, or a new one. A new one puts on a blank. I'm just going to call this visual demo. And as you see, I've already been playing with this. So the file already exists. I'm just going to overwrite it and hit OK. And you see this has popped up here. Trace configuration is invalid. And that's because it's blank. There's actually nothing in it. So no trigger has been selected, or no channel or IO have been selected. So that's the next thing we're going to move on to. Now your trigger is what actually starts the collecting of data for your trace. There are several selection modules that you can pick from. For the most part, there's two that you'll use, and that's the one is KRC IO. So that lets you pick inputs, outputs, cycle flags, input bytes, output bytes, or cycle flag bytes as the trigger. And the second one is KRC IPO, and this is the one that is used most often. And I'll just go through a couple of them, or the main ones that you can use. Recording time reached is just that. So when you specify recording time, and I'll show you that in a second, when it reaches that recording time, it'll trigger the trace to collect data. Motion start is the next one, is probably the most common one. When the robot starts to move, it triggers the trace to collect data. Air stop with reaction. So that is if there's a stop message with the red highlighted stop reaction. It's used so if you're having errors and you can't figure out why, this might be a good thing to use. And then there's a couple here in German. I think this one is very commonly used to sort out an actual error number. So if you typed in the error number here that is popping up on your SmartPad, the trace wouldn't start till that error message is popped up. And then there's a variable as well. Not too often I use this one. So the main ones I use are recording time reach, motion start, error with stop reaction, and the error number. Today I'm just going to select motion start, and you can only have one trigger. So if I try to send another one over, you get an error. So then next we're going to move on to IO. I don't know if you guys remember, in my program I had wait for input. I'm going to specify an input 89 and send that over. And then I'm going to do the same for outputs and send that over. You can also select multiple. So if I went from 89 to 98 and sent that over, it includes all of them. So I'm just going to send these back actually and just do the two. Okay, and as you can see, you can do input bytes, cycle flags, output bytes, and so on. Next is the configuration of channels. Instances are basically your number of axes. So we can control up to 12 axes on a controller. The default is 6 for just the robot. And these are all basic items here, or channels, set point position, actual position, position lag. That's something if you're having following error problems, you might want to look at that. Same with the velocity and velocity difference. If you're telling it to go a certain speed and it's not reaching that speed, these can be all checked. Set point torque and actual torque. These are things that if you're having problems, say you're burning out motors for some reason on a particular wrist and you're not sure why, you can monitor these torques, and if you're getting spikes and peaks in certain areas and you're not sure why, you can check the positional data compared to these torque values, and you could be rubbing on something or just bad programming, and you need to smooth out some of your corners in your programming. Motor temperature, it's obvious. Actual current, same thing. For today's demonstration, I'm just going to do XYZ Cartesianal positions, and then the actual Cartesian velocity of the TCP. And then the last tab is advanced configuration. Now, these are endless choices here. This will be very specific for someone if you have a certain problem and support asks you to go in and check these ones. But for today, I'm not going to bother, but that's what it'll be for. They'll specify exactly which one they want to see, and you can select from the endless amounts of channels. Okay, so I'm going to go back to our common tab here in configuration. The trace name, this is the actual name of the trace, so it should be something different or something about this particular trace that you're doing so that you can identify it later. You don't want to keep overwriting the same trace, because if you need to compare, you'll overwrite the one that you're trying to look at. So always put a name here that means something to you for the trace. Duration, so I said I was going to explain this earlier. This is just the actual duration of the trace. So when you start the trace and after it gets triggered, it'll go on for however many seconds you put in. I'm just putting in 6 because it's just a little short trace. Pre-trigger, this is something that buffers the data before the trace is triggered. So if you're in a situation where you're having an error and you want to see what's happening before the error, this will buffer so much of the data so that you can review that in the trace. I'm just going to put 10% here just so that we have something to look at. Okay, and then I'm going to bring up the screen here. I'm actually going to go into auto mode on this. And so because for this particular scenario, I don't want to start the trace yet, because as soon as I do the first motion, it will trigger it, and I don't want the first motion, which is just P2P home, to actually do anything. This is completely up to you, but I just figured I'd demonstrate this. So now what I'm going to do to start the trace, the file already exists because I've been doing this for the last couple of days just to make sure it works. So it prompts you to overwrite. I'm going to say yes. You can see the trace has started now and it's in a wait state. So it's just waiting for the trigger. You could trigger it yourself, or I could start the program and the robot's going to move and it will trigger. So I'm just going to start the program here. You can see it was triggered, and now it's just waiting for the duration to go through 6 seconds. Once the 6 seconds finish, the trace stops and it writes all the data to the trace. For some reason, you've got all the information you need, you could always hit the stop trace and it'll end the trace as well. Okay, so now that we have that, I don't believe we need this screen anymore. I'll just close this. And next is our trace analysis So again, our source is going to be the controller, not local, and we're going to open up the trace recording that we just made. You can see these are our selections. You can take them over individually. You can double click on them and they'll go over, or you can just send them all over. It's up to you. If you have a pile of them, I would just take over what you need, because this can really bog down your computer. If you have, well, I'd say anything over 25, you're really going to bog down your controller. So try and keep it to a minimum for what you just need for viewing. So once we've got that, we'll go to our oscilloscope tab, and you can see your trace. I'll just go over the buttons down here at the bottom. Show settings. These are the settings for each trace line. If you need to see more of your trace, you can just turn that off and let you view the trace more. Display cursor coordinates. This is very helpful if you need to pick up the actual values of the lines. It shows on the left the actual value of the lines, and on the bottom it shows the time value. So if for some reason you need to pinpoint something, this is very handy. Scale automatically, I never use, but I'm going to show you. It never seems to work out to the view that I want to see. It's hit and miss. So I scale individually for everything that's on the screen so that it makes sense to me. So the first thing you'll see is there's some straight lines down here. They look about 0, but that is probably our inputs and outputs, because they're just 0 and 1 compared to these values of 900. You're not going to see them. So I'm just going to create something and give it a scale of a value that I can see better. So that's a lot easier to see. And I'm going to do the same thing for the output. Okay, a lot easier to see. And then there's one more still, and that is our Cartesian velocity. You can see here it's in meters per second. So, that's really slow. Most robots, like 4 or 5 meters per second is going to be the fastest it's going to be. So I'm going to make that 1,000 and make it millimeters per second. And there you go. It's a lot easier to see. Next thing you see, the colors of these, some of them are very almost the same. One's fire brick and one's brown. I'm going to change this one to something that's a bit more recognizable. Even that is still coral. That's a crazy color. So that's not too bad, right? You can see all the lines, the scaling, and it's pretty easy to see. So the next tab here is move automatically. This can come in handy if you can't fit everything on the screen. You just want a quick look at something. It just centers everything. I don't use it a lot, but it is handy sometimes to, if you want to quickly center everything, to check where things are matching up with certain positions and certain data. Right now, this still is a bit busy here. Our inputs and outputs are, in line with the curves, and it doesn't really help things. So I'm going to move those. I'm going to offset them so they're easier to look at. So right now, our position here, Cartesian actual velocity is about 3.2 or 3,200 millimeters a second. So I'm just going to move these up on the y-axis. So that we can see them. You can see, so 3,300, that pops out above, and then the output, I'm going to pop that up a bit as well. And there you go, that's nice and clean. You can see your I/O coming off and on as well with your curves and everything like that. So it's a lot cleaner. And then there's a couple other features here I just want to show you. If you want to zoom in a section, well, let's first off, I'll show you. If you had a big long trace, like several 60 seconds long or something like that, and you wanted to scroll back and forth, you just hold down your left mouse key and move back and forth, and it'll update for you. If you just want to zoom in on a certain area, like a zoom window, hold down your control key, zoom in with your mouse, and just release, and it zooms into that area. It's very convenient for trying to pick up on certain positions and numbers that you need. If you right click on the screen, it will take you back. You can fit home. Also, there's other features when you right click on the screen. Copy screenshot. So if you want to copy the screen and paste it into some sort of editor, you can do that. You can save screenshot. You can save in PNG, JPEG, BMP, or GIF. And then there's a quick help button. Okay, next I'm just going to go back to the channels screen, and what I'm going to do here is you can create, so this, the source of this trace is actually on the controller right now. And what you do, if you create local copy, it creates a copy on your laptop. So if you need to relook at this trace some other time instead of being at the controller, you can do that. So now I can go back to my source here, go to local, and then that trace is available, the same trace. So I can send it over, look at the oscilloscope, and I have the same trace. It's very handy. Also, if you want to export it, you can export it for someone else to look at. You pick your trace, finish. Actually, I should do that better. So I'm going to export, pick the trace, and I'm going to browse, and then you can pick a folder. I typically keep one on my desktop that I keep all my traces in. You can export that folder and then, send that data off to somebody and they can look at it on their laptop. Okay, any questions?
There are none at this time.
Okay, hopefully that was very clear. I know it might have been a little fast. I get talking fast, but.
Well, if there are no questions, I'll give it a couple more seconds here.
Okay, so I've just got one more thing that I want to mention, just so people don't get caught. So after you've made some online changes, like we did earlier, it's best to go back to the configuration and commissioning screen and rebrowse to that project because they are kept in separate repositories. So if you think your WorkVisual project that you have done in your configuration commissioning is updated, it is not. So you just want to browse to it and overwrite it because if you think you've saved it on your laptop, you have not. So that's just a word of advice that someone's done it before.
All right, I don't see any questions.
Okay. Well, that's all for me then today.
All right. Well, on behalf of KUKA Robotics, I want to thank everybody for attending today. A recording of this will be available very soon. And thank you very much. We appreciate your time again. Thank you. Have a great Tuesday.
Yeah, bye everyone.
Industrial Intelligence.